Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Good evening, everybody. We have a couple items we need to go over with you in tonight's pre-meeting. The first item is a request on the council's part with respect to the status of where we're at concerning the city's share of the opioid settlement funding that the city has been receiving over the past 18 months or maybe even as long as 2 years. Council will recall that at this point in time, the city has received some $600,000 dedicated to this settlement award, if you will. And certainly, as council is aware, there's been conversations over the years with regard to the county commission's equal amount of funding and what maybe we could do in partnership with that. The city attorney's been helping us in terms of getting some of those relationships put together with the county commission, and it was council's request to hear what the status is of that effort. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could turn the time over to our city attorney, I'd appreciate it.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, so that might be easier to use the microphone and easier for the public to hear as well. Plus I just like standing before you. Yes, and thank you, Mr. City Manager. So I'm here to give kind of an update on the opioid settlement funding that the city has received. And by way of background, I'm not sure how familiar each of you are. Some I'm sure know quite a bit about the history on this. But it all started when multiple lawsuits nationally were filed against pharmaceutical supply chain participants, both from distributors down to the retail end of things, regarding the detrimental effects that the opioid crisis has had on our nation and community. These were consolidated into multi-district national litigation. The city of Casper retained Jason Oakes to represent us in some of these. And without going into a lot of the legal machinations around that, there were settlements that were reached in this national litigation, and the state of Wyoming, through the Attorney General, entered into these settlement agreements as well. The city of Casper, along with multiple local governmental entities in the state of Wyoming, signed on to what were termed the One WYO opioid settlement memorandum of understanding. There's actually two separate settlements. One occurred back in December of 2021, and that had to do with kind of the upstream pharmaceutical suppliers. My recollection at the time, being with the county and being involved in it, I think the first tranche of monies were received just before the year end in 2021. Since that time, last year in April of 2023, there was a second One WYO 2 opioid settlement memorandum of agreement that was approved and entered into by the city. And this had to do with the retailers such as Walgreens, CVS, et cetera. Now it's very interesting in these settlements. It's not as if any one entity, well, let me back up. So there's a split between the state of Wyoming gets a tranche of money, and then the state gets one pot, and then the balance of that is split up amongst the local governmental entities, municipalities, and counties on a pro rata basis. And I want to say that of the local governmental entities share, Casper gets around 7%. But that's not all distributed in one lump sum. There is a number of years in many instances when these companies have to make payments. To make things even more complicated, some of these companies decided to accelerate those payments and pay it in one lump sum. Other companies have since filed bankruptcy, and so are in corporate bankruptcy, and that's being hashed out. So long story short, it's all over the board. And so I think our finance director could give you more detail, but this money has kind of trickled in periodically in different amounts. And to date, the city of Casper has received $605,490 in settlement funds from various companies both on the 1Y01 and 1Y02 settlement agreement. We've done a little bit of looking to try to ascertain what would be the expected time frame in which we would receive additional funds. When might those come in? We got a little bit of information on that. It's still somewhat of an enigma to me, but that's what we currently have on hand. As part of those settlement agreements, the funds are restricted in their use. And in your packets, I attached Exhibit A, which was attached to these statewide settlement agreements. And that outlines the various uses to which the city can put those funds. And it's fairly expansive. The overarching, I guess, parameters, if you will, have to do with opioid abatement strategies. And that can be treatment, that can be education, all kinds of different things. And again, I don't know that this is necessarily an exhaustive list of the ways it can be used, provided that whatever use it's put to, it falls within the spirit of this document. So again, they're not unencumbered funds that can be expended as however we want, but they're targeted in their application. So sometime it's been a while ago, and frankly can't remember if I was at the city or started it when I was at the county and then we finished it when I was at the city. We had a subgroup of folks got together, Anna Kinder from the health department, Christy Oster, who now works with the Health Trust, some representatives from Mercer House got together and were tasked with putting together an RFP, if you will, that could potentially be sent out to providers in the community. And I know that they did most of the heavy lifting, and that's draft RFP is attached. And I think the fundamental approach to this was really to keep it very broad, not put a lot of tight sideboards around it other than Exhibit A, and really rely on the expertise of the providers to come up with approaches to best utilize these funds. While on one hand, it's not a de minimis amount of money. It's not enough to build a brick and mortar facility and keep something going for decades. And so the eye really was towards, what kind of novel approaches could be presented that we could put this money to on an operational basis. The further thought was that if this could be seed money that could, develop and incubate some ideas, and if proven successful, then how could, this seed money be leveraged with other potential grant funding or what have you to make a longer lasting impact. And so that's kind of the methodology in the RFP. The last document that I've attached is a very rough draft of an MOU with Natrona County. And so in our county, the two local governmental entities receiving funding are the city of Casper and Natrona County. None of the other municipalities are receiving funding. And Natrona County, I believe, is receiving a roughly equal share that the city is receiving. And so there had been some discussions around, it makes sense perhaps to collaborate with the county to try to jointly identify the best opportunities and then most strategically deploy these funds for the benefit of the broader community. And so what was contemplated, at least initially, was putting together an MOU that would create a committee with representatives from both the city and the county. Some discussions that I had with folks thought that it would make sense then to jointly identify an at-large individual, maybe someone with expertise in opioid abatement strategies, if you will, to provide some technical expertise, and that this committee could come together and make recommendations on how these funds should be expended. I do understand that Natrona County had some inclination to using some of their funds for the sheriff's department, perhaps on a drug detection dog, is what I heard. So instead of saying that we'd all just throw all our money together, the way I structured the draft would be just on every dollar that we would commit, they would commit $1 as well. So whatever they would commit, that we would be obligated to the same level. And so that's kind of where it currently stands. Just need to kind of push it forward, I think, with the county. Certainly, though, we have the discretion to take an alternative approach at this point in time. I can tell you that one thing that was pointed out, I think early on in these discussions, and there seemed to be consensus, was that medical detox services were a dire need in the community. And so that seemed to be a priority area for funding. And again, not to build a new detox center, but to see which providers in town, A, are capable or already providing those services, and B, how they would propose to utilize these funds. So in broad strokes, I think that's my report. And I'd certainly try to answer any questions that the mayor or council would have.
Councilor Pacheco.
Thank you. Eric, do we know, it sounds like the county's kind of, I mean, we're ready to go. And I know I was part of the initial conversations. I think I was mayor at the time and we had the conversations. And it sounded like the county attorney was going to review it and kind of look over those things. We don't know where they're at. And I mean, that, I can't remember how long, maybe I was vice mayor at the time. We don't know where they're at as far as them signing the MOU or wanting to move forward with the MOU.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, I've had some discussions with the county attorney. It seems, I think that they're philosophically still on board. We haven't sat down and really, gone through the specifics of a draft. And I would submit perhaps that's a conversation for elected officials or our city manager maybe to push it if that's the inclination of council.
Sure, thank you.
Councilor Sutherland.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, I know I've asked a lot of questions about this, but I appreciate being able to have it in this forum. So I have a couple of questions. I wonder if I could just give you them and then you can take them in whatever order you want. Is that okay? Is that okay, Mayor? Thank you. I'm curious if we know how much the county has received in terms of their allotted amounts. I'm also curious if you have any insights on what the state's plan is to do with any of the funding. And then I guess I just had, maybe it's more of a comment or a curiosity about like the makeup of that, the 5-person review panel. It just seems to me, I mean, obviously having representatives from the county and the city makes sense, but just in terms of expertise and understanding the ones that would have the best, most positive impact on the problem. I guess I just wonder if it could be valuable to have more experts on that review panel than just the one kind of non-governmental person. So that's just the thought, but those other questions, if you know, I'd be curious.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, I don't have a specific number on the county's allocation at this point. My recollection is their percentage of allocation was very similar to that of the city. So
okay.
If we're at 605, I would say they're somewhere in that ballpark. So okay. Collectively, probably 1.2 million-ish in funds. As far as what the state has done, I don't know. I don't have that insight. Unfortunately, I think it would be relatively easy to ascertain. I think that some of that has been deployed. So easily we can find that out and report back. As far as the makeup of that, I mean, there's no magic to that 5-person. That was kind of a default starting point. And so depending on council's appetite, the county's appetite, I mean, it could be 7, 9 people, it could be 5, it could be 1 counselor, 1 commissioner, and then, mutually agreed to experts. It could be how it's proposed with technical advisors. I mean, there's so much variability and it's just whatever we think is going to work best.
Councilor Gamrow.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Eric, for all the information. I was curious, it sounds like the RFP, when it's published, will be asking for proposals that are focusing on the 3 areas. The first being treatment, focusing on treatment and detox. second, continuum of care, case management, housing, aftercare, and third, harm reduction, education, and Narcan, peer recovery and stuff. I was curious, what sort of discussion has there been? You know, this funding is finite. It will end at some point. And so I guess my hope with it is that we are maximizing the impact that that limited funding can have. And I wonder this RFP that we're publishing, if it's too broad. And so I just was hoping you could provide me some context on what sort of conversations, you know, the conversations that were had to identify these three priorities. Was there also conversation about how to be really surgical with the use of this money and perhaps narrowing the scope of focus even further, just to try to get proposals that are very tailored for exactly kind of the outcome that we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, so that's a great question. I think that Ms. Kinder, Ms. Oster, and I apologize, I don't remember the ladies from Mercer House. They had met several times before I met with them, and my understanding is the basic framework of this RFP was taken from RFPs that they had pulled from other communities. And they were very intentional, I believe, in keeping it broad, because I think there's a recognition amongst them that while we may have priorities identified, we're not the ones that are on the front lines, you know, providing it. And so the idea, I think, behind their methodology was to really cast out there broadly and see kind of what came back from the providers. And, you know, certainly from there was discussion around, you know, so should these be 6-month grants, 12-month grants, in recognizing the finite amount of money. The discussion kind of centered around, you know, the proposals being time limited, shorter, really more of a kind of let's see what works, because we know that you know, even if we have the silver bullet, we're not going to be able to fund it long enough for it to be the silver bullet. So if we can do things that would identify, hey, this is a novel approach and it works, then we know we need to go find additional funding for it. But again, nothing set in stone. I mean, this is, I think, kind of, you know, in many ways a starting point. Certainly if we did go the MOU route and establish kind of a working committee, then that could be something we dive deeper into this. Very, very appropriate, I guess.
Okay.
Is there somebody over there going?
Nope.
The only thing that I would say then is that can we start maybe moving forward with getting contact again with the county as far as the electeds, and maybe whether that's the mayor or the vice mayor or whoever, you know, be able to have that conversation, or you, Carter, to get together and say, hey, look, let's start pushing this forward. What do we need to start moving forward, and how we start wrapping that up? And so if they've got a majority of their funding and we've got a majority of our funding, I think it's, you know, we've been sitting on this for quite a while. I feel more in the sense of let's start moving forward with it. And I agree with Kyle that we can, you know, kind of reestablish, okay, are we hitting the targets with the RFP and realign what we need to? But I'd like to see this start moving forward now that we're starting to get this money and get it used and utilized in the community now, and then instead of waiting another 8 months or so.
Thank you, Counselor, for saying that. I think that's kind of the angst that I'm feeling. Eric's first day on the job with us was one of the first times our collective group met. In fact, Miss Malone came as well to that meeting, and that was her first day on the job, or very close to it anyway. And so too much time has transpired, I think, and we're real anxious to get it moving. I know that there are other stakeholders in the community that ask about it frequently to our office. So I share your concern that we've taken too long.
And I don't want my thought coming across as I'm perturbed or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
At all. We're not in the least bit. Nobody's to blame for anything. I just want to make sure that we're on top of it and moving forward with what we're trying to accomplish with this money and start utilizing it, because we need it in the community. And I've had people reach out to me about it, but so if we can do that, I'm all on board and pushing forward in what we need to do.
Absolutely.
Pragmatically. So thank you. Appreciate it, Eric.
Comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next, the weed and pest technician request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And please talk fast. We're really behind schedule.
Okay, no problem. We are in the unique situation where we have a great relationship with the Weed and Pest District. They came to visit with us not too long ago on another item. And one of the things that they have talked to us about a little more intently is with respect to the need that they would like to see better filled, if you will, pertaining to active spraying throughout the community, throughout the summer months and so on. Admittedly, trying to get the right personnel that can handle chemicals and do those kinds of things is a challenge, particularly when we find ourselves in the situation of not being able to hire those in a timely manner to where we can get on top of that and be ahead of the weed growing season. Last year was a bit of an aberration, as you all recall. We had just a ton of water, unprecedented water, and that set us back in terms of being able to get ahead of it. Our situation now is that we have a weed and pest fund that is a pretty healthy fund, but has to be relegated to weed and pest specific activities. And so the request that we have in front of you today, that Zulema can certainly add more detail to, is whether or not you'd be comfortable with us moving forward with an early hire to make that happen. This would be in concert with a position that we've had historically, but have not filled in recent budget sessions. However, we do believe that if we can get on top of that, we can get spraying earlier in the season and make that eradication happen, hopefully more effectively. That's the table setting. However, Your Honor, I'd feel much more comfortable with Zulema filling in some of the blanks that I probably left open, if you don't mind.
Not a problem. Come on down.
And councilors, good evening. So as the city manager indicated, we are really interested in bolstering our staff within the Weed and Pest Fund so that we can devote more intentional resources to weed and pest control, primarily our noxious and ornamental weed control. So anybody who frequents our parks and sees the native areas has probably been disappointed in the recent past that the weeds have gotten a little out of control in a lot of places, and we just don't feel like we've had the resources to allocate the appropriate time and energy to controlling that. And so this would be our effort to devote a specific body to doing nothing but mapping where noxious and ornamental weeds exist, developing a program to address those issues, and then probably just as important, measuring the effectiveness of our program and then making adjustments as needed. This person would also be responsible for inventorying all the chemicals used for weed and pest control throughout the entire city and making sure that that is entered appropriately into our Tier 2 recording, which is a requirement for fire safety as well as EPA regulations. And so we have some very specific tasks that we would like this person to handle for us. And we feel like this kind of more devoted effort than we've been able to have in the past will help us get ahead in our weed and pest operations.
Questions?
Thumbs up.
Do what? Now, I have a question for the money man and for Zulema. Looking at this, I didn't quite understand. Will we be paying part of this out of 24? And then this would be a new position for the 25 budget? Or is this strictly for the 25 budget?
Mayor, councilors, so we would hire this position hopefully in March. And so from March through the end of June, those funds would need to be out of the FY24 operations budget. And then in FY25, we would include the position to be funded from here on out.
And you have the money to do that in your budget?
Yes.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, and just
Yes.
to be clear, this is a weed and pest fund initiative.
Yes.
This would not be something that we generally would be able to support through the general fund.
Okay.
So those funds are on hand, they're there. And again, we're meeting with historic staffing levels as it relates to
Well, I know
just
that
a couple of years ago.
prior to COVID, we had 4 people
Right.
there all along. So
Exactly.
just wanted to make sure the funds were there and everything, and we weren't gonna put you in a bind.
Thank you.
That's what I was interested in. So you got my thumb too then. So it looks like you got a thumbs up from the council.
Appreciate
Is
it.
that a true statement?
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Zelima. UPS closures.
The closure we're referring to is the United States Postal Service sorting facility here in Casper. A couple weeks ago, the council asked us to follow up with some prepared comments that ostensibly would represent the council's position on this possibility, with the idea that we would object to those facilities closing here in Casper, with regard to the impact that we believe it would have on the services that are offered through the USPS. We have those comments prepared. They should have been in your packet for you to review. The hope is that the council would feel comfortable authorizing the mayor to sign on to those comments, and which would then equip somebody from this group to be able to go to the public gathering tomorrow that is taking place from 3 to 5, if council so desires, to either represent those comments or submit those comments on a formal basis. Council should be aware also that public commentary to the same online are actually open through the 7th of March. So however council would like to proceed from here is why we are here tonight.
Quick question. I'm assuming that is here in town.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
The Hilton Garden Inn.
okay. So is council okay with me signing the letter that's shown in the packet?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is there anybody here? Because I know Kyle and Jenna and Lisa and myself will be in Cheyenne tomorrow. So is there anybody else here that will be in town that would be interested in going to in person represent Casper?
At 3 p.m.
Do it.
It's at 3. FYI.
Okay. Okay.
Just for someone's working in 8 to 5.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, that's why I was asking if anybody was. If not, we will try to formulate an online response then and get that in by when?
March 7th is when that.
March
closes.
7th,
Yeah.
okay. We will proceed with that route then. I just thought if anybody did have the time and availability, it would be good to go. So, but yeah, we have to be in Cheyenne for meetings. Okay. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
So we will do that. Agenda review.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing that I thought might be appropriate to bring up or hopefully helpful to bring up would be with respect to what you are recommending for the amendment tonight, and that was really it.
Oh, okay. And basically what he is talking about is right when we get to the utility building, we'll get a motion and a second on the motion, but before the amendments, I'm going to make a short statement that it would appear that G will be taken out. So therefore, we will be postponing comments from the public to see if that passes. If it does, then we will take the comments from the public and go on from there. So that we don't spend a lot of time with residents complaining about G and we turn around and take it out 10 minutes later. So, or 20 or 30, depending on public comment. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do this evening. So that was the only thing to let you all know what's going to happen there. That being, does anybody have anything else? Otherwise, it is 6 o'clock, so it's now time for regular meeting to start. Oh, 6:01, we're a minute late. So, before we begin this meeting, I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones. Council meetings are live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. I now call the February 20th, 2024 regular council meeting to order. All councilors are present. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the February 20th, 2024 bills and claims as audited by city manager Napier. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please report the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay. Communications from persons present. Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with council to come forward. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to the public to allow them time to voice their concerns. Therefore, council will take communications under advisement, but if they choose to respond, they will do so at a later time. Please state your name, direct all questions or comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal obscenities or threats will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. If council chooses to address these matters, it will be done during the introduction of measures and proposals by council at the end of the meeting. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes and no time extensions will be permitted. Please note that the public hearings and ordinances each have their own comment period. Looks like we have somebody already lined up.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Dakota Kemmons. I have spoken here a few times. The last time I spoke, I said thank you to you guys. I wanted to make sure I read this to you guys and give you guys one in case you needed to possibly have someone help with certain situations. Yesterday on February 19th of 2024, I got my first letter of support / recommendation. And as I've been struggling as homeless and dealing with the stuff that I have been dealing with, this is a pretty big achievement in my eyes, and I want to help fix certain situations. So it says, "Dear Sir, Madam, Mr. Kemmer has been a client at Kind Grounds since the agency's inception. On November 1st, 2023, he has been an outspoken advocate for the unhoused and continues to render assistance to the population of which he is also a member. Kind Grounds serves the community as a quasi-navigational center, placing services and opportunities for the unhoused in Natrona County, Wyoming. Casper is a metropolitan city in which Kind Grounds provides needed services. Mr. Kemmer has worked with the clients well at our center and with staff at our agency as well. Certainly, would our agency have the opportunity for employment of an advocate or paraprofessional, Mr. Kemmer would be a notable candidate for such a position. With Mr. Kemmer's permission, this licensed clinical social worker would readily accept any inquiry for supportive measures of this individual." And I wanted to make sure that I could give you guys this in case y'all needed someone as a homeless advocate. I am a very outspoken person, so with that being said, if I see problems, I do call people out on them. And most times that could cause me to get in trouble. But like I have said to Christy Oster and Mr. Councilor Ray Pacheco, I'm one of those people that when I see something wrong, I stand up for it. I can't just sit idly by. So if it means that I have to be the one to stand by people dealing with injustice as much as I have, I will do so. So finding out this week and last week that the Casper Housing Authority was to rehouse me due to the federal regulations of VOVA or VOVO. I don't know the correct words, but I've been working with city council in orders to, or community action, in orders to help to get that taken care of. With the protection order that I have been dealing with. I also found out that due to my situation, I'm going to be able to go to the district courts and hopefully try to get this situation with the civil matter that I am dealing with and get visitation to see my daughter. But over and above all, I know this may not come as much, but you guys listening to me and everything that you guys have done to help me means a lot. And I love you all very much for that, because I don't really have people in my corner to help me with that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I was wondering, should that go maybe to the city manager?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the one thing I was gonna ask, is that your only copy? Do you need a copy?
No, I have,
Okay.
I made sure I got 5, so.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we'd be happy to take it into file. You bet, thank you.
Very good. We'll pass that over to you. Anyone else wishing to speak to council tonight on unordinance related matters? None appearing, we will move on. I declare the public hearing open for the consideration of an ordinance vacating a segment of alley abutting lots in Kenwood Addition located south of Jackson Street. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier dated January 17th, 2024.
Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a neighbor generated request as it relates to vacating an alley that the city has had in place since 1912. The area that we're talking about is south and west at the intersection of East 8th and South Jackson Streets, as this exhibit indicates. As part of the due process that we go through with regard to these kinds of requests that we get from time to time, we have reached out to the utility providers and franchisees in the area. And pursuant to the comments that we received as a part of that effort, the city will reserve a 13-foot wide easement for both existing utilities in the area as well as utilities that will likely need to be installed. However, given that this is an alley that isn't used much or at all, particularly since its inception way back when, we are supportive of the vacation, which means that adjacent property owners will each receive equal shares of the subject area pursuant to your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of an ordinance vacating a segment of alley in Kenwood Addition to please approach the lectern. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to an ordinance vacating a segment of alley in Kenwood Addition to please approach the lectern. There being no others to speak for or against an ordinance vacating a segment of the alley in Kenwood Addition, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
Vacating a segment of alley abutting lots 5, 6, and 7, Kenwood Addition to the city of Casper, located south of 816 South Jackson Street.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Council Gamrow.
Carter, for the sake of reference, this is right in the near proximity of the vacant lot that we, did we vacate it? Wasn't there another piece of land in this area that just last year we vacate's the right word, but gave up to an adjacent property owner? Anyone else remember this? Am I the only one?
Bernardus.
I was just curious.
I'm feeling inclined to say yes.
Well, I was getting along weird looks too, so now I feel like I'm being gaslit. I was just curious.
I remember who the beneficiary was.
I remember us giving away some land, but I didn't remember
Well, I thought it
exactly
was
where
right
it
in
was.
this area, so I
It
just
is.
didn't know if they were
It is.
related.
It's close.
Okay, but it's not necessarily,
It's not on top of each other.
okay. I was really doing it.
They did that back in the day when they were developing the neighborhoods, because at that time they didn't really have covenants or easements and like all kinds of things. So they did all kinds of crazy stuff back then.
Any other discussion from other council members? Amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Aye. Please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Trying to get ahead of myself. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the annual renewal of liquor licenses. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. I do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Clerk Trammell to J. Carter Napier dated February 1st, 2024. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of website publication as published on the City of Casper website dated February 20th, 2024. Exhibit number 3, Casper Star Tribune proof of publication published on February 1st and 6th, 2024.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any report?
Mr. Mayor, I do. Counselors, thank you. This is the time of year where the council has the opportunity to consider the renewal of the gamut of licenses that you issue as a part of your responsibilities as the city council. As you are aware, that includes everything from a restaurant license all the way up to the fully appointed retail and package license. As you have noted in your memo that addresses the same, there are those licenses that have stipulations. You have a recounting of information that the chief shared with you last week. And there are those who have decided not to renew their licenses or are in the process of putting their issued license into action, if you will. Carla Mills Latch is the one that is the expert in this area. And if it's okay, Your Honor, I'd like to defer a part of my report just for a few specifics from her. That's okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Your Honor, counselors, good evening. We're asking for you to renew 91 liquor licenses tonight. 37 retail, 19 restaurants, 15 bar and grill, that still leaves 4 available, 8 microbrews, 7 limited retail liquor licenses, 2 special malt beverages, 1 satellite winery, 1 satellite distillery, and 1 winery. We did have 4 restaurant liquor licenses that chose not to renew. Bar and grill in restaurants do have a requirement of 60-40 split, 60% coming from food, and they have all met that threshold. I'm here for any questions.
Is now the time for questions, or since this is your report, do we need to take the public comment first?
Mr. Mayor, I do think that questions would be most appropriate during your discussion portion. If that's okay with you.
Don't go too far.
Okay.
Because it looked like we were gonna have a question or two. Thank you for the point of order there. I wanted to make sure that we didn't get things screwed up. Okay, so council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the annual renewal of liquor licenses to please approach the lectern. None appearing. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the annual renewal of liquor license to please approach the lectern. There being no one to speak for or against the annual renewal of liquor licenses, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the annual renewal of all city of Casper liquor licenses for licensing period April 1, 2024 through March 31, 2025.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Now, did you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
So I suppose when we're looking at these reports, we're only giving just kind of the snapshot of just last year, but I'm not, for myself personally, I guess I would like to see the last several, maybe the last 5 years of the establishments that served alcohol to minors. And so we're not provided any kind of previous data so that we can see which establishment is actually a problem or not, versus, so we just are presented just last year's information. And so I guess that's, it's just more of a statement because I don't know who's really has been a substantial problem in the past versus not. So that's just more of a comment.
Well, I guess my question to that comment is that in your purview or is that in Chief McFeeder's purview? Or city manager?
That's all right, yeah.
Somebody please help.
Your Honor, that is in Chief's purview. However, I did ask for that information this year and I did get it.
Okay,
I did not include it in the memo, but I can, moving forward, I can do so.
that would be wonderful. Thank you. But Councilor Gamroff, I should say.
Yeah, I concur with that. So Carla, glad to hear we'll be getting that. I would even, hope for, we can't get it before the end of the evening, but if we could get it in one of our, upcoming packets, I personally would like to see it sooner than having this discussion again next year. So yeah, that's good to hear. My question is for the chief. I was curious, so we had a list of folks that failed the compliancy check. My question is, do we check them again after a failure? Is one violation the most somebody can rack up in a single year? Just a little curious, as far as the, frequency of those checks. Thank you.
Mayor, council, virtually all of these licensed liquor establishments, barring an unforeseen circumstance, we arrived, they were closed, something of that nature. Virtually all of them are checked at least twice in a year. And so we do our best to make sure that everybody is fully tested at least 2 times. So it's entirely possible, and we have had it in the past for somebody to fail both of our compliance operations. For historical data, we always have the same packet that you were given this year still exists in our archives here, and I can just make that a part of next year's report, a historical look at that performance over a period of years.
Thank you. Follow up if I could. I think that would be helpful. I know we don't have a fully staffed police department, and in an ideal situation, we might be doing a half a dozen checks or something on these folks. I do like the fact that we have a graduated fine schedule. First violation is 150, second is 200. The third violation, it sounds like it is at the point that the license holder would have to come in front of council, and there's a little bit more accountability in that regard. And so you know, I understand you have a limited budget and, the department's spread very thin, but I personally would love to see us get to a point where we're doing at least 3 checks on places so that if we do have some egregious violators, there's some additional accountability there where we can have a further conversation with them and, talk about, you know, what they, you know, what we could be doing better. So again, that's just my personal, I understand that, that might not be plausible considering everything else you're juggling, but, we have the graduated fine schedule in place, and it'd be a shame if we couldn't, you know, allow ourselves full opportunity to, enact that if we're not satisfying the minimum number of compliance and checks.
Any other questions for Carla or Chief McPheeters?
Just had one, I suppose. Was there any establishments that kind of raised to just something that we should know that's maybe a problem?
Mayor, Councilor, as I reported last week, there are none of our current licensed liquor establishments have risen up to the level where we're just flat out tired of it. That cannot be the same for just a few years ago. There were ones that we were working with very closely to bring them back to a point where they were not causing us so much allocation of our resources. But for the last 2 years, we have not had anybody that really kind of drew our attention as being outside of the norms.
Anybody else? Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Carla. Appreciate it. Any abstentions or nay votes? And I would say to please note Councillor Pollock's recusing. Any other abstentions or nay votes? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Please record the vote.
With Councilor Pollock abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Somebody willing to get Amber? Okay. Oops. Are you listening to us on the YouTube?
Laura is texting me.
Okay. Because it seems like you always get in here.
Yeah, she tips me off.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Oops. Second reading of an ordinance. Okay, it's not a public hearing. Never mind. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Approving a zone change of multiple properties located north of East 12th Street between South Conwell and South Lowell Streets from PUD planned unit development to C2 general business.
The council would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
Second.
The council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Anybody from the audience? Discussion amongst us. Amendments. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye. Aye. Please record the vote.
All councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
And I won't bang the gavel this time, so don't need to hold your ears. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Approving the annexation and zoning of 0.51 acres more or less described as Lot 5 Bryan subdivision.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second. Goes Kyle.
I'm going to give it to you. He just seconded the last one.
Let the record show.
Let the record show. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. No comments from the audience. Do we have any comments or discussion around the Diaz? Amendments? Abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Ratifying all actions previously taken concerning City of Casper, Wyoming, Local Assessment District Number 160, confirming the proceedings, assessment roll, and assessment. Therefore, assessing the amounts in said roll on the property in said district, creating a lien therefore, and prescribing the priority therefore, directing the certification of said roll by the city clerk and transmittal thereof to the city treasurer, prescribing notice that said assessment shall be paid and the terms thereof, providing for the payment of said assessment, creating a special and a separate fund therefore, providing for the collection of delinquent assessments, and prescribing various details concerning said provisions.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Anybody in the audience? None appearing. Any discussion by councilors? Any amendments? Abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
All councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
Amending chapter 13.03 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding utility billing and collection.
Thank you. Before I ask for the chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Who is the second? And now, before we go to public comment, at our work session last week, it appeared that section G, which is the making of the property owner responsible for billing, will be removed by amendment. So we're going to go ahead and go through the amendments first, so that if that does pass, your voices have been heard and we won't need to go through that part of it. If it fails, we will then have public comment. So just so that the audience knows, because I'm sure some of you came for that. So at this point, are there any amendments? Councilor Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend the ordinance to reflect the following changes: removal of 13.0, 3.050, connection or change of service, section G in its entirety.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that you? Okay. Discussion. I think we pretty well hashed it out.
You were done in the show.
Very good. Any abstentions or nay votes on the amendment? I will vote nay. Okay. Nay. All in favor of voting aye,
Aye.
please record the vote.
With Mayor Kathy and councilors Pacheco and Bond voting nay and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
No vice mayor.
Yes, and Vice Mayor Ingebretson abstaining.
Yeah, it did pass
Yeah, motion
by one vote. Because it takes 5 affirmative, correct? Okay. Are there any other amendments?
This related to the First Amendment. Do we need to make both amendments?
Mayor, if I might, Councilor Pollak, with the removal of G, the last sentence of subsection A doesn't fit. And so it would be our recommendation that that be amended and removed as well.
Great, then I will move to amend the ordinance to reflect the following changes. Removal of the last sentence of 13.03.050, connection or change of service, section A. All prior charges related to the service address must be made in full prior to new services being established.
Second.
Did we cover that in discussion or do we need more discussion on that?
I think it's just to close the loop on, make it agree with itself.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor introduction abstaining and all other counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Now, we will listen to public comment. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, council members, Keith Goodenough, 333 South Seconi. You've amended out my original complaint. So my new complaint is I put all these hours into creating 5 minutes of eloquent discussion and observation of what you should do to make this so much better. And after all my work, now I don't get to say it. But I think you did the right thing by taking that out. And there are some other issues I think that are part of this too. I didn't concentrate on those. One is, and as I understand it, a landlord cannot access the account status if the tenant has it in their name. And so the landlord has trouble keeping track of the payment situation because the tenant has the account in their name. And it seems to me that that's an area where it could be improved. And one approach might be to have the tenant, when opening the account, sign a privacy waiver so that the landlord could better be able to keep track of that. And because there are issues now, even without this, without the change that was originally proposed. So we might look at that. There's also the possibility, if you're looking for a totally different approach, I don't know if you've discussed the idea of only opening the account in the landlord or property owner's name. So the account would, the privacy issue wouldn't apply, and the landlord would probably be likely to keep closer track and be able to address the situation better if they were on the hook for the bill without having the change where the tenant runs up a big bill and then foists it off on the client. So those are my only comments. I hate to be so harsh with you, but only hours, days, my dog had to listen to my speech so I could tell whether it was acceptable. And so I'm a little irritated about that, but other than that, thank you for taking that.
Did you get a good tail wag from the dog?
Yes, I did, and I think
Very
it's the
good.
tone of voice that really brought it home.
Okay.
Favorite thing. Thank you.
And as a point too, while you're there, we did discuss the taking it straight to the landlords, but did not feel that that was probably appropriate to do on third reading.
No.
So that has been discussed and considered.
That's one for the process, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. And can I ask a question? Well, since we're in discussion. Yes.
We still need public comment though.
Any other, thank you. Any other public comment? Keep me on my toes. I used to give you flack.
You're doing fantastic.
So I guess turnabout. I would have a question for Miss Jill. Are we in our new ordinance, because I know we kept some things in there, are we allowing the landlord to be able to get the notices of delinquent payments or get notified of a delinquent tenant? Or that may be city manager. I don't remember. Sure.
Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me this evening. Yes, everything else would remain the same as we have proposed. So the landlord would still get a copy of the delinquent notice. They would still be able to contact the city following a delinquent issue. And hopefully they will be partners with us in getting these resolved.
Thank you. In answer to your other question. Thank you, Ms. Jill. I think, Councilor Pacheco.
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Couple things, as we move forward with this ordinance, without G being in there. We find ourselves in the same spot where we were before we did this ordinance, not fully being able to recover the funding and the money that we are losing in the city. So that's something that we're going to have to address. We constantly go to the city manager and we say, Mr. City Manager, make some tough decisions for us to recover and to make sure we're balanced in this city. We look at him and we do that. I've seen it with other councils that do this. When it's time to make a tough decision, when it's time to make a decision that's going to make us solid, we back down. And so I think that that's something that I'm going to push back on hard, because if we call ourselves fiscal conservatives and we look at trying to do this to try to say, how do we make the city of Casper solid as a business? This is what the one opportunity that we get a chance to do this, and we back down from that. That's the unfortunate part about it. So what is our case? What is our plan now? And I think that the city is going to have to come up with something and come back to us. And I think it's still going to have to involve landlords. So we're going to still have to have a tough decision to make in the days ahead of ourselves. So we're going to have to look at that and kind of figure out, what do we want our city manager to do? If we give directives to him to make tough decisions to how we are going to do with our budget, we've got to figure that out if we want to do that. I applaud the city staff and Carter for doing that and bringing to us a very difficult decision to have to do this. So thank you, I appreciate it, and that's all I've got to say, and I'll drop it there.
Any other? Did you have a comment as well? I will go with ladies first, if that's okay. Go ahead. You both held up your head at the same time, so.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess just first to say, thank you to staff for all of your work on this. And I know that it's been really tricky for all of us involved. And at one point, I thought I had a really clear decision, and then I got confused and ended up making a different decision. So I think it's definitely been one of those evolving and iterative processes. I agree with Councilor Pacheco that we need a solution here and that we didn't fully fulfill that mandate tonight. The reason that I voted to remove that amendment is because of some concern that it could place undue burden on residents who are already facing challenges in access to housing. And I'm concerned that there could be multiple deposits put on them by the city and their landlords if we move forward. However, in our discussion last week, we discussed coming back to the data, the information in a 6 months-ish time to see the effects of improved communication with landlords on our collections processes. And I think, at this point, it feels like there is good reason and good logic behind the idea that Mr. Goodenough shared with making landlords only able to have the accounts in their names. I remain open to that as a possible solution. And I believe that many communities are starting to move in that direction. But I just want to say that I do agree that we're in a bit of limbo here, and acknowledge that does burden us to an extent. I just hope that it offers us an opportunity to gather more information that helps us make the right choice with some more time. So just putting that out there. But thank you.
Councilor Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with both my colleagues. Big thanks to all the city staff that were involved in putting together all of these materials and coming and joining us for weeks at a time, since I know we've really beat this issue. But I think it's one of those issues that warranted it. I appreciate Councilor Pacheco's opinion of it. I am looking forward to the next several months, seeing what sort of impact, if any, these amendments that we did pass, what impact they will have. Hopefully more so than maybe current expectations allow. As was brought up by Keith earlier, we did mention in our meeting last week that we would revisit here in about 6 months and consider just mandating that property owners or landlords put the utility bills in their name. And that's something I'm looking forward to as well, because I think that was a major point of contention, was the fact that we allow tenants to put it in their names, yet make the property owners and landlords responsible. That seemed to be a big point of contention with a lot of the folks I talked to. So I think that's part of the, that's one topic, I guess, that I think warrants further discussion. I'm looking forward to it in the future. And just appreciate the process, I guess. Councilor Pacheco's mentioned it before, but this is one of the rare issues where we kind of have a split amongst council, but I appreciate the way everyone conducted themselves, and thankful to serve with a body that acts like adults and can, you know, reach decisions in a professional manner. We have that's a luxury that is not afforded to most any other body I can think of. So I'm thankful. Thanks.
Agreed. Councilor Bond.
I just wanted to say just quickly, the reason I voted nay on the amendments was I felt like that just took the teeth right out of the whole idea. That there's no skin in the game. The way I'm looking at it, there's no skin in the game for the tenant. The tenant has nothing to lose. There's no skin in the game for the landlord, rather. What's the landlord's motivation to hound their tenant or remind their tenant that their water bill is delinquent, even if they have access to the information? There's no teeth there. So that was my reason for voting no.
Back to Councilor Gamble.
I guess one more thing that I'm thankful for, the fact that we've kind of funded this issue and we'll reconsider it in 6 months. I was reading an article today. I don't know how much traction it'll gain, but it sounded like it was pretty popular and it was a very bipartisan solution. But I know Representative Hartman was suggesting a solution to property tax, the wild increases in property tax, and his proposal was to get rid of property tax and increase our sales tax 2%. And so I guess that's just something for us to be mindful of in these coming months, or I guess in these coming weeks. We'll find out whether that's actually going to pass through or not. But I think sales tax is usually considered a regressive tax. And so one of my primary concerns with passing this ordinance as fully amended was, as Councilor Sutherland brought up, the impact it would have on lower income renters and folks that are trying to move out. My worry, I haven't had a lot of time to digest it or think about it, but my worry is that if we get rid of property taxes and increase sales tax 2%, that's going to be another dog pile on these people. It's not, the people that own their own properties will benefit as a result, but the people that are renting, they'll have to come up with 2% more sales tax for their groceries, for their diapers, for all of their necessary consumer goods. And so just, again, one of those things to be mindful of, because I know that was one of my main concerns, and I think it was shared by my colleagues that voted along similar lines. So just something to be mindful of in the next couple weeks. Thanks.
Any other comments? I guess I'll throw my 2 cents within at this point. Basically, I would reiterate everything that Councilor Pacheco said. I feel that we are punting it down the road, and as Councilor Bond said, this basically took the meat out of the ordinance with no repercussions for bad tenants or bad landowners. We all agreed that we would come back to it in 6 months. My request to the city manager would be either the last meeting in August or the first meeting in September work session. This goes on that agenda. If everybody is in favor of that, that's our 6 months. Everybody in favor of that being on the work
I would just
session?
caveat, if city staff feels like they have useful information that has been gathered at that point.
I would just as soon punt it till after January the 7th when I won't be here. But I'm not going to do that. I feel like we owe it as this council to not kick it further down the road. That's the reason I brought that up. So, but it looks like it's an agreement with everybody, the majority.
And I would just say, Carter, I mean, kind of what along the lines of what Councilor Pollock was saying, maybe you can come back to talk to us and be like, hey, I just want to give you guys a heads up, 6 month period, we don't have enough information. to be able to give you guys any definitive. But maybe that 6-month line can be you just coming in and being like, hey, guys, just want to be frank with you. We don't have a lot of information for you at this point, and then we can make decision from there. Might be good.
Then we can go to after January 7th.
Yeah.
I have to tease someone. Very good. Are we all good so far?
All good.
Any abstentions or nay votes? I will vote nay. And this is, I'm sorry. Let's back up. Any further discussion? Any further amendments? There being no further amendments, we will vote now on the amended ordinance. Are there any abstentions or nay votes? I will vote nay.
I'll vote nay.
All those voting aye,
Aye.
please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Ingebretson abstaining and Mayor Kathy and Councilors Bond and Pacheco voting nay and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
We'll now go to the non-consent resolution. Council will now discuss the resolution for a letter of agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
Authorizing a letter of agreement between the city of Casper, Wyoming through the Casper Police Department and the United States Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration in the amount of $15,000.
The mayor would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
Second.
City manager, do you have a report?
I do, Your Honor, councilors, thank you. This is the opportunity that the city has to work in partnership, as you mentioned, Your Honor, with the Department of Justice for drug interdiction programs, wherein we use this $15,000 to pay overtime costs aimed specifically at, as I just mentioned, drug interdiction activities. We have been a partner in this regard for a number of years now, and we hope that we'll be able to continue this relationship to take a stab at curbing some of those related activities. And that really is why we're seeking your approval for this this grant opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do we have any discussion? Go ahead, Councilor Gambrot.
Mayor, I was the one that asked to remove it from consent, so figure I might as well kick it off. Getting deja vu, because this was like the first time it was a very humbling moment for me when I first got on council, because we accepted a grant, this very same grant. I think it was spring of 2021, within the first couple months of my getting on council. And I got a lot of flack for it at the time because I was against it, but didn't realize you could vote for against specific consent items. So I made sure to do my diligence and remove it from consent this time, so I won't get all tripped up. Just in general, I think I've been pretty vocal about my thoughts on cannabis overall on this council. So I'd be happy to reiterate some of those, but I just do not believe that we should be accepting this grant and following through with the, we did a big drug operation with the grant the last time we got it, and I don't think it was received well by the public. And I personally wasn't incredibly impressed with what we gathered. I think it was about a pound of cannabis and grams of, 60 grams of meth and a gram of cocaine or something like that. So I just didn't think the juice was worth the squeeze at that time. Couple highlights, again, according to a 2020 survey of Wyoming residents, 75% of them do not believe someone should go to jail for small amounts of cannabis. It's part of the reason I am against this. I'm referring back to the WASCOP 22 annual report again. In Casper, we had 52 cannabis involved arrests. Of the over 1,000 total offenses in Casper, that represents a little less than 5%. So I just don't believe the majority of our constituents support heavy enforcement for cannabis-related crimes. I think it is, those efforts are a bit in vain, considering the fact that we are surrounded now with states that have legalized to a certain extent, one way or another. And I just don't think it's an appropriate use of our staff time. That's all I got. So I will be voting against this one.
Councillor Eggertson.
I have a question for the chief. I think it's actually a two-part. When we awarded this before, were you specifically only looking for marijuana, or were you looking for other things?
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, when we participate in this grant, which we have done now for 2 years, this will be the third year of this grant. We are doing drug interdiction. That covers a wide variety of all of the drugs out there. So these aren't, some jurisdictions would use this grant to locate growing fields of marijuana and deal with that. We don't have that problem here. So when we are using this grant funds, we're using overtime to free up officers so that they're not responsible for answering calls. They have that time to be proactive, to work on some of the intelligence that we've been given, to be proactive in their efforts without interruption for drug interdiction. And it is not specifically limited to only marijuana and marijuana products.
Second question. So this grant can be used in a different way than the way that you're currently using it. So could it go towards maybe something of education purposes kind of scenario?
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, this grant is very specific in the things that it can be used for. And so there is no provision in there for education purposes.
Okay.
You were next on my list.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Chief, just to follow up, in our memo, it says that it's for things directly involved in the eradication and suppression of illicit cannabis. So I guess I'm confused on the information that we have, because I agree with Councilor Gamroth. I don't support this if it's just for cannabis. And I'd just like some clarification there.
Mayor, Council, the nature of the grant from the Drug Enforcement Agency is, for their purposes, they title it the eradication and elimination of marijuana. What we are asked to do is to use this money to affect those targets. But when we are doing that, we are actually interdicting drugs across the board.
Can I ask a follow-up? Is that, so is the variable here is information and intelligence on issues related to cannabis, but in the process, often other drugs are discovered? Is that what you're saying?
Chief.
Mayor, Council, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pollock.
Thank you. I'll be voting against this as well. I think I have a perfect record, unlike Councilor Gamroth, for voting against this grant in my tenure here, but I don't have a lot to add in terms of reasons. It's really not, I don't have a problem with the police department's handling this grant or anything like that. I have a problem with the Department of Justice and the DEA pushing these grants out into communities. They're very specific about their intentions to continue to heavily enforce marijuana and suppress marijuana. And to me, like, I just fundamentally disagree with their focus in that arena. So I don't take issue so much with our police department and their their efforts, but really take issue with the DEA and the Department of Justice's position on this topic generally. So I'll also be voting no.
Any other comments? Councilor Vaughn.
Chief, just a clarification under, I'm reading the Department of Justice directive there about option 1 and option 2. Is it fair to say that the enforcement activities that take place by our police department in this arena are largely aimed at the trafficking of marijuana as opposed to the person standing on the street that has a joint or that kind of thing? Is that fair to say?
Chief.
Mr. Mayor, Council, again, if you look at the goals as they were enumerated in this, there are some that just flat out don't apply to us. The one that does apply to us is the use of these monies to provide overtime opportunities. So, it's important to me that we kind of paint the accurate picture that the Casper Police Department is dealing with. Oftentimes when we're involved in a crime, be it recently, we currently have a very large investigation of a violent crime. And it was 100% based upon the trafficking of marijuana, without question. It's a homicide in our city that we are currently investigating, 100% revolving around the trafficking of marijuana in our community. When we get engaged in various different crimes, we arrive on scene and we could be investigating a burglary, we could be investigating a forgery, we could be investigating any number of things, but then we find when we are serving a search warrant for that purpose, unbeknownst to us, we find the evidence of drug trafficking. That makes us, according to the due process legal elements of our jurisprudence process here in the United States, we have to stop what we're doing. We now have to get additional search warrants because of this discovery. We have to stop. And so this affords us the opportunity to cover some of those expenses as we are dealing with that. So we could be dispatched to the shots fired call, and before you know, we're deeply entrenched in another thing. The current investigation that we are working on, it would be a fair estimate to say that we've already expended on that investigation probably 4 times the amount that this grant would return back to us if it were all devoted to that. So these investigations can be complicated. This is an opportunity for us to free officers up to use, as is clearly enumerated in this grant agreement, discretion. It gives us the discretion on how we're going to go about trying to accomplish these goals.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Appreciate it, Chief, and I liked your explanation of how we are using it. Even though the title states marijuana and everybody throws their arms up, there are certain things that marijuana is causing in our community, just as you stated, but we are also finding the fentanyl, the coke, all of these other more dangerous drugs in some of these investigations. So I am extremely pleased that we're hearing that. My other concern is I don't mind you enforcing the marijuana part, because as a person that deals in the oil field, which is and mining, which the oil field falls under mining, are the 2 most dangerous activities in Wyoming. And I can tell somebody that's got alcohol, I can smell it on their breath, they're staggering. I can pull up something and say, yeah, you're over the limit. We're going to keep you here on location until you sober up, and then you're fired. I can't do that with marijuana, with fentanyl, with any of these others. And so I am fully for workplace safety, fully supportive of you enforcing any drug law that's on the books. Chief.
I just want, since 1995, the Bureau of Justice Statistics have been asking questions of our state and federal prison inmates. And under that questioning, the rate at which persons answer in the affirmative that they were under the influence of a drug at the time of the offense being committed, marijuana is by far and away the number one reason for that. Meaning marijuana was the reason that was the drug that they were under the influence. That's more than 2 times for cocaine and crack cocaine. It's more than 10 times for opiates. It's more than 10 times for hallucinogens. Marijuana is substantially the number one drug that they were under the influence when they committed the crime that landed them in prison. And oftentimes, you know, when it graduates to the level of being incarcerated in prison, those are generally crimes of violence. This is something that is important to our community. Whether or not everybody agrees with the enforcement of marijuana laws, it's still against the law in Wyoming. It's still against the law in the United States. And it's still against the law in the city of Casper. And so we are going about our job in trying to make public safety a priority here in the city of Casper. And it's our belief that this is a useful grant to help us achieve our public safety goals.
Thank you very much. Any other comment or questions from Diaz? Any abstentions or nay votes?
Nay.
Did you get all of those? 4. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Councilors Gamrock, Sutherland, Pollock, voting nay, and Vice Mayor Ingebrigtsen voting nay, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Consent resolutions. Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
8B1, authorizing amendment number 2 to the contract for professional services with CH2 Hill Engineers Incorporated for the Sam H. Hobbs wastewater treatment plant MCC replacement project. 8B2, approving a vacation and final plat creating the Marauda Cove Addition subdivision. 8B3, authorizing an agreement for software between Target Solutions Learning LLC, doing business as Vector Solutions, and the city of Casper in the amount of $10,000 to procure an operations and training records management system. 8B4, authorizing a software or services agreement amendment between Image Trend LLC and the city of Casper to procure an integration module for vector distribution. 8B5, authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services with Cone Incorporated for the City Hall Elevator Modernization Project. And 8B6, authorizing an agreement with Crown Construction LLC for the downtown parking garage drainage improvements project.
The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda items just read.
So moved.
Second.
City manager, would you like to comment on any of these items?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action titles.
9A1, authorizing the purchase of 4 new turf utility carts for use by the Casper Municipal Golf Course. And 9A2, authorizing the purchase of 1 new greens roller for use by the Casper Municipal Golf Course.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
Second.
Any extensions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
At this time, we ask councilors to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We're going to shake it up a little bit and start with Councilor Pacheco.
What?
I don't have anything specifically, but I do share that I've been on this council here with this group for a while, and there are a few times that we, find ourselves where we're really just disagreeing with each other or kind of split votes, and that happened twice actually just tonight, which is a good thing. And I think it's a healthy thing around those things that happen within bodies of government, that there's healthy debate. But I think what the difference is for us is that the gridlock that happens, especially at the state of the national level that we see, is not the occurrence that happens here on this level, where we work together, we talk together, and we may not always agree with it, but I appreciate that. And we are above quite a bit, the work that we've done here, and it can be difficult sometimes, but it certainly is an area that I respect every single one of my colleagues, even though we might be on the wrong side today, but tomorrow, after we walk out of here, we'll be friends. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Jensen.
Well, I wasn't prepared to go first. I usually need some motivation to get going and generate some ideas, but I don't have anything, just getting ready to head to Cheyenne tomorrow for WAM and then come back, and we got a few things to do when we get back here too on Friday. So that's it. I don't have anything specific. We had a chamber meeting today, and that was well, and we're having a lot of taking up a strong advocacy role for that. So there's a lot of good changes that are happening in the chamber, and so we're just going to be out there and advocating for things more. You'll see them join forces with a lot of other groups that are doing the same thing. So just looking forward to where we're going as a Chamber of Commerce and a community. So looking forward to it. That's it.
Councilor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo Councilor Pacheco's sentiment about, I appreciate the fact that we can disagree on issues and still come together on some more in a more united way. But when we disagree, it's always done in a respectful manner, and I appreciate that. One thing I did want to bring up, I don't know how aware folks are, but they were, and this is mostly because I had tickets to go. There were two different performances at the event center, and both were canceled. And I wrote to the ticket office person and got a very, very nice response, and it was just things beyond their control. And so I certainly understand that, but I just was concerned it was two in a row. The Postmodern Jukebox and the Broadway performance. And the Broadway performance was, I think it was both was the providers. It wasn't anything with the venue or anything like that. I think it was both of the contracted people were backed out for some reason. So, but it's just kind of disconcerting that they would do that two in a row. So, because that's a lot of, that's revenue for the city. That's, my night out. Was,
More importantly,
bing. So yes. But other than that, no, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Councilor Paula.
Okay, I have a laundry list of meetings to update you on. I had the
Is it clean laundry or dirty laundry?
I'll let you be the judge of that. Amoco reuse agreement joint powers board meeting last week. Had some updates, no major actions taken there. We did welcome our new board members who just started their term, and got a update that you probably remember the restaurant and clubhouse there has gone through a recent remodel and is outperforming its initial projections, which is great for that organization. As you know, Amoco reuse agreement joint powers board subsidizes that operation, and so improvements there are good for that pot of money and the sustainability and longevity of that. So that's going well. This Amoco 3 Crowns. I had an MPO policy committee meeting. update that I would give you there, we have 2 vacancies for the Citizens Committee for the MPO from Casper. So we are soliciting interested parties to participate in that. It's the MPO is made up of multiple different committees. This is the one that is specifically for citizens. They help us a lot with garnering public engagement and providing input themselves. And so we're looking to fill 2 spots. So would encourage anybody from the public who's listening to consider applying if you're interested in getting involved. That organization gets funding to conduct studies and do kind of like a research-based initiative for future projects and collaborative projects that affect the greater area. Farnham, Evansville, Mills County are all involved. So it's an interesting committee to be a part of, and if any of you know someone who might be a good fit, please have them contact me or Carter's office. We'll get them in the right place. Had LGBTQ advisory committee meeting on Friday. Just went through basic updates of the initiatives going on there, which really remain unchanged. It's predominantly data gathering to bring information back to council, working with PD and to understand some of their reporting on hate crime statistics, and then just a discussion of kind of state of affairs in terms of policy in that arena. So that meeting, it was Friday. Had Economic Development Joint Powers Board meeting this morning. We did not have a quorum, so we did not take any action. I was actually the only person there, but I did get a personal presentation about CNFR and about an update from the Wild Sports Ranch. So Economic Development Joint Powers Board historically has supported CNFR with a $10,000 grant. And so I expect that we'll provide that level of support again, but we have not, we couldn't vote on it today. Just got an update on where Wild Sports Ranch is at. Fundraising efforts are really going well. And if people have been to that area of town, you see vertical structure being put up. So great progress being made, and they're indicating that they are on track construction wise. Things are moving ahead at the pace that they had hoped. And so they are still tracking just as they expected to be, which was great news. And then the last, I don't have any more meetings to review with you, but I would advocate for the folks who are working with the Homelessness Coalition to consider taking Dakota up on his offer. I think it's best practice to have somebody with lived experience in those groups. And, I don't know if you need to go through a more formal process to solicit applicants or something like that, but Dakota's shown up here several times, and I think he has great insight and has really seemed to be really proactive about navigating through systems. And I think that insight could be really helpful for the group. So would encourage those of you who are dealing with that committee to consider that offer. That's it.
We'll skip the vice mayor and go to Councilor Sutherland.
Thank you. I actually don't have a lot to update. I also attended the LGBTQ advisory meeting. Everything Councilor Pollock said was true.
Well, thanks.
To validate.
I have not lied to you.
So, just agreeing with my colleagues on things feeling a little more, I don't know if exciting is the right word to use, but just different. Having some split votes. But I think I think it's worth acknowledging that it can be done and we can move forward as individuals and with respect for one another. And I think all of us do come to this really trying to do what we believe is the best thing for the moment. So I appreciate all of my colleagues. I almost made a joke saying I don't like any of you, but I actually do. And it's, I appreciate it, and the dialogue. And then I think that Counselor Pollock's recommendation on including Dakota and or others for the coalition, I'm not sure what the process is there, Mr. Manager, but maybe we could chat about that to figure out what the opportunities are to engage more directly with the community, with the unhoused community for those purposes. So that's it.
Coastal Gamma.
Want to give a shout out to Casper Fire and EMS. They rescued a dog in the middle of the river over the weekend. So I don't know who had to get in the water. I don't know if it was chief or what, but I want to thank Metro, it sounds like, was taking the animal in, so it's like to see a good resolution to that. They pushed out a PSA that was relevant to the situation that, you know, around this time of year, it's probably a good idea to keep your pets leashed if you're walking around the river. And if they end up in the river, you should give these professionals a call as opposed to trying to jump in yourself and get yourself into a bad situation. So I wanted to thank the Casper Police Department for responding to the calls for assistance from Sheridan. That was obviously a situation that everyone was following very closely. Sounds like one of our officers was involved in the fatal shooting of that suspect, and I was glad to hear they get put on paid leave, and sounds like they're receiving all the resources and help that they may need. Good community effort. I saw even that Home Depot and Good Samaritans in Sheridan were working to rebuild the house that was destroyed during that operation. So unfortunate, but thankful for all the communities in the area working together to get to an outcome, probably best case scenario. It was mentioned earlier in the meeting that USPS is going to have that public meeting tomorrow, 3 p.m. Garden Inn on Poplar, to allow the community to provide feedback and perspectives on the findings of their review. That they stated that our processing and distribution center would be turned into a local processing center. They have assured that there would be no layoffs, but I think if you read between the lines, that means they're going to shift some of those jobs up to Billings, where they're moving the processing and distribution center. So it's going to have an economic impact. It's going to affect jobs. It's going to affect sales tax and property tax, and you know, it's going to have a ripple effect moving them there. So I hope folks show up 3 p.m. tomorrow at Voice App. You might have seen, I think Cowboy State Daily published it like an hour before we came into our meeting, but the Federal Railroad Administration has announced a new expansion proposal that would run 3 passenger rail routes through Wyoming. One on the I-80 corridor, one north to south from Billings to Cheyenne, running right through Casper, and another one from Cheyenne to Rapid City. I know this is on our March 5th pre-meeting agenda, so I'm looking forward to forwarding that letter of support. Really want to back that expansion proposal and do everything we can to support that. So I'm looking forward to that here in a couple weeks. And then lastly, I had a Casper Housing Authority board meeting last Thursday. In the last meeting, I believe I gave an update on social service agencies in the area, seeing an uptick in Native Americans. I also mentioned that our Casper Police Department is unfortunately booking a disproportionate amount of those folks as well. Casper Housing Authority is seeing the same thing. They are seeing an uptick in Native Americans seeking services in Casper. Sort of in relation to some of these events that they're seeing, these observations are making, Liberty Square, which is that complex they just opened on Beverly Street. I gave an update about them filling that unit. They already had one unit accrue $6,000 in damages within the first month of it being open. Individual was incarcerated for a felony level crime, got out, and again, within the first month, they did $6,000 in damages over there. So that was unfortunate. It was mentioned that some of our local landlords, one in particular, he's got a portfolio of about 500 properties. It sounds like he is, you know, at the age that he's probably considering retirement, and it sounds like he's already selling off some of that portfolio. The Casper Housing Authority views this landlord in particular as a good partner, but there's others in the community because they, operating under HUD, they have federal regulations and guidelines that their tenants must abide by. Smoking cannabis is one of them. If you're smoking cannabis, you are ineligible for placement at the Casper Housing Authority. And so there are other landlords in town that house people that are not eligible for housing at the Housing Authority, and there's very limited other partners that place people that are lower income or struggling to find housing. And so going back to a discussion earlier in the evening, I'm worried about these potentially unrelated instances of situations that are occurring in community that I think can kind of dogpile folks that are trying to find housing. I'm worried that this landlord that has so many of these properties, he's going to sell these properties, and the future landlords are not going to be so welcoming or open-minded of the tenants that they're receiving, and they're going to restrict a lot of, they're going to make it harder for some of these people that historically would have been able to get housing with some of these landlords. That's not going to be available to them any longer. And a reminder, Housing Authority went through 259 applications to fill 60 units at Liberty Square. So that's 199 people that needed low income or workforce housing that will have to find it elsewhere. I don't know where they're going to find it, but so yeah, just I guess another thing to be mindful of. I think there are a couple landlords in town that historically have served the lower income, impoverished population, and it sounds like they're potentially considering getting out of the game. And so I feel like we're really going to experience a housing, capacity crunch. I think that's a population of people that we just need to be really mindful of over the next year or two, because I see a few different things that dogpile on them and make it really hard to get housed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Haskins.
I love following behind Kyle. So just before I start to argue, Interfaith has a website that does list the people that will house felons or not. So if we do have landlords that are interested in getting on that list, I'm sure that would be helpful to a lot of people. That said, I don't intend to be gone barring impeachment on January 7th. So if the utilities are not ready in 6 months, I will be here, because after all of our discussions with landlords and our last work session, I am an advocate of putting it in the landlord's name. And at least a couple of landlords agree with me. So I do not intend to let that drop. I did approve the amendment. I feel like that gives us a window where the city can get all the kinks regarding communicating with landlords or not out, and we can move forward, because that's my end goal. So I got you two quitters. That said, obviously my only meeting was canceled, so I clearly need more committees. So when we decide to set up that opioid committee, pick me. And I was also very sad that Postmodern Jukebox was broken. They were sold out everywhere but here. So I'm pretty sure that the problem is we as Casper just aren't cool enough. But Kyle and I are going to drop kick Murphy's because we are supporting people. So if you two could talk faster. State wrestling this weekend, and I'm done.
Was drop kick tonight?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to get through it.
So my position on the no vote was and I truly appreciate what the police do and all of their hard-earned efforts. My struggle is that it feels like we're only targeting one aspect when we have alcohol, which is the massive elephant in the room. And we have so many DUIs and so many people in jail because of DUIs and alcohol-related crimes. I'm frustrated that we're only looking at this, and I wish that there was a way that we could look at it all together as one versus just one small piece, because we do have a serious alcohol problem in this city. So that's what's my stance. And then I was going to comment with Michael. I think that the ticket sales were just not there for those. So that's what. But and then we're going to legislative meetings this week. So no, that's it.
Basically, yeah. Our water board meeting from today was moved to next Tuesday because of legislature. We'll be gone the next 3 days to Cheyenne for the WAM and meetings with state legislators. I want to thank the police and all of the police department for their work with Sheridan. That was a wonderful thing up there. And I understand we are going to continue for funeral services, for traffic control and things along those lines. So hang in there, Chief. I know it was a difficult time, and pass it on to your officers that we appreciate all that they did. Thank you. And hang in there. I'm not going to avoid the other corner as well. I do have a question for you. How is your new training program going? Because didn't you put on several people that are partially being funded as trainees through a grant from the state?
Mr. Mayor, we currently have a recruit academy of 4 recruits right now.
There you go.
Yeah. That's being ran internally through our training division and our own personnel.
And it's going well.
It's going really well.
Very
We've
good.
got some top-notch people.
Just, we hadn't heard any updates or anything, and since we were trying to check, and kudos, we appreciate that. And I guess we'll try to be back here for your police department. I personally will try to be back here by 5 o'clock Friday night. So, very good. Beyond that, I don't think I have anything else. The next meeting of City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 Tuesday, February 27th, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, March 5th. I noticed in an executive session, I apologize to the Dropkick Murphy people, to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss, matters related to personnel. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved. Second. Everybody is.
So should I put down all?
You know it.
And who was the second?
Sure.
There are a majority of councilors present, and a motion to adjourn into an executive session has been moved and seconded. The motion requires a 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye? Aye. Please record the vote.
All councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
A greater than 2/3 majority of council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session. Thank you all for coming.